My parents refused to pay for my college education, but they paid for my golden sisters, so I left home. Over the course of 7 years, they demanded $100,000 from me. Growing up, I always knew my sister was the favorite. It's not like my parents ever came right out and said it. There were no formal declarations, no medals pinned to her chest. But the signs were there, unmistakable, undeniable, and consistent enough to etch themselves into the background of my life like wallpaper you eventually stop noticing. Her name is Emily. 2 years younger than me, golden hair, perfect grades, and the kind of charisma that makes teachers forget she ever forgot her homework. My parents, David and Sharon, adored her. I was the trial run. She was the final product. When I graduated high school, I'd already accepted I'd have to fend for myself. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had a decent 2-story house in the suburbs. Both of my parents worked full-time, dad in IT, mom in real estate. They had the means. So when I asked about help with college tuition, I wasn't expecting a blank check. Just a conversation. Some kind of plan. Instead, I got this from my dad. "You're 18 now. Time to learn responsibility. Loans build character." And from my mom. "We think it's important that you learn how to be independent. It'll make you stronger." I remember sitting at the dinner table, a full plate in front of me that I no longer had the appetite for. "I've got a 3.8 GPA, I said quietly. I'd been working part-time since junior year. I'm not asking for a free ride. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. "You'll figure it out." I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just nodded. That's what I'd been taught, to swallow it, move on, and make do. And so I did. I picked a state school, took out loans, applied for every scholarship I could find, and kept working 20 to 30 hours a week on top of full-time classes. I moved out 2 weeks after graduation and didn't look back. 2 years later, Emily graduated. I came home for her graduation party, more out of obligation than enthusiasm. The living room was decked out like a wedding reception. Streamers, banners, catered food, a chocolate fountain. Emily wore a white dress and the same smug smile I remembered from every school award ceremony she ever dominated. Halfway through the party, I overheard Mom talking to one of her friends in the kitchen. "Oh, yes, we're paying for all 4 years. She's worked so hard." I just couldn't bear the idea of her starting adult life with debt. I froze. It wasn't even the content that gutted me, it was the tone. Soft. Proud. Protective. The same parents who told me debt would build character had spared her the exact thing they deemed necessary for me. I stood there, beer in hand, surrounded by laughter and music, and felt the floor shift beneath me. That was the last time I stepped foot in that house for almost 4 years. I didn't make a dramatic exit. I didn't send angry texts or block their numbers. I just stopped being available. Stopped returning calls. Stopped pretending I owed them my presence when they had never truly invested in mine. Those years were hard. I finished my degree by clawing my way through burnout, insomnia, and ramen noodles. I took contract work, web design, freelance consulting, anything to keep the bills paid. I taught myself to cook cheap but healthy meals, how to write cover letters, and how to rebuild a laptop with $60 and YouTube tutorials. No one bailed me out. No one asked if I was okay. Eventually, I found stability. I landed a solid job in digital marketing at a mid-sized firm in Portland. Not glamorous, but enough. I got my own apartment, bought a used car that didn't squeal when it turned, and slowly started paying off the mountain of debt that still haunted me. I didn't tell my parents any of it. Then, one Sunday morning, I got a call from my mom. I let it go to voicemail. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. Her message was short. "Hi, sweetheart. Call us back when you can. We need to talk about something important." I didn't call back. 3 days later, my dad emailed me. Subject: family matter. "Your mom and I have been reviewing some financial obligations related to the house. We were wondering if you'd be able to help us out with a few things. Just some short-term support. Call us when you can." I stared at the screen, blinking. Financial obligations. Support. After years of silence, of distance, they wanted something now. I didn't respond. They tried again. And again. The requests grew more specific. First it was a few hundred. Then 2,000. Then, out of nowhere, $10,000. For a roof repair. For a car replacement. For Emily's emergency after she moved back home for a while. Over the course of the next year, they asked for help 6 times. Every time, the amount grew. The most recent one, sent via email with a PDF attachment labeled Family Contribution Agreement, was for $100,000. I opened it. Read every line. It was absurd. They wanted me to commit to monthly payments, nearly $1,200 a month, for the next several years. To support the family legacy, as they phrased it. I called my dad for the first time in years. He answered on the second ring. Finally, he said. I thought you'd gone off the grid. I read your email. There was a pause. And? I took a breath. You told me debt would build character. You said it would make me stronger. That was different. Why? He didn't answer. So I said it for him. Because I'm not Emily. And then I hung up. After I hung up on my dad, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. I half expected him to call back immediately, but he didn't. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe he was stunned. Or maybe more likely, he still believed I'd come around eventually. That I'd remember I was family, and that family meant obligation, no matter how uneven the ledger. I didn't come around. I started therapy instead. At 27, after a decade of self-reliance and emotional landmines, I finally sat across from a licensed stranger and said it out loud. I don't think my parents ever really loved me for who I am. My therapist, Karen, didn't flinch. She just nodded. What makes you say that? I smiled sadly. Because they only reach out when they need something. The more I unpacked, the clearer it became. It wasn't just about college tuition. That was just the first obvious crack. It was the cumulative weight of years spent being the backup plan. The one expected to be grateful for scraps, while Emily got the spotlight, the investment, the care. It was the birthdays they forgot or brushed off. The school plays they didn't attend. The way they'd praise Emily for getting a B, and criticize me for getting an A-. I'd internalized it for so long I thought it was normal. But now, with distance and perspective, it looked like what it really was, favoritism disguised as fairness. The emails kept coming. Sometimes from my dad. Sometimes from my mom. Sometimes from both, carefully worded like formal requests for a business transaction. One email actually began with, as the more stable child, we thought it was appropriate to appeal to your sense of duty. I almost laughed. Stable? I'd built my life from duct tape and unpaid internships. I'd cried into sink basins between shifts. They hadn't been there for any of it. But now, because I was standing, they expected me to carry their weight too? No. I replied to that email. Short and to the point. I am not your investment. I don't owe you dividends. After that, the tone shifted. Suddenly, I was ungrateful. Cold. Selfish. Mom sent a long message listing every gift they'd ever given me as a child. Toys. Soccer uniforms. A used car for my 16th birthday that I had to pay to fix myself. Everything we did for you, she wrote, and you abandon us when we need you most. Abandon? That word stuck in my throat like a stone. They had cut me off emotionally, financially, and spiritually years ago. And now, when I finally put up a boundary, I was the deserter? I didn't reply. One evening, Emily called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey, she said. Her voice was soft, not smug for once. Can we talk? I hesitated. About what? Mom and Dad. They've been weird. Like obsessed with you paying them back for something. I don't even get what they want. I let out a dry laugh. Of course you don't. She paused. That's fair. I could tell she was trying. That made it harder. I didn't know they didn't help you with school, she said. They told me you didn't want to go. That stopped me. Wait, what? They said you were trying to be independent. That you wanted to figure it out on your own. I laughed again, sharper this time. No, Emily. I begged. They told me it would build character. Oh, she whispered. Wow. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Real. Then she said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I believed her. we talked for another half hour. She asked about my life. I told her a little, not everything, but enough. She didn't try to defend our parents. She didn't beg me to reconsider. She just listened. Before we hung up, she said, I don't think they ever expected you to become who you are now. I don't think they ever wanted me to, I said. Weeks passed. The messages slowed. Eventually, they stopped altogether. And for the first time in years, my life was quiet. I threw myself into work. Took on a new project that challenged me creatively. Started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done since college. I made new friends, real friends, who didn't know anything about my family and didn't ask. I told them as much or as little as I wanted. I was building a life on my terms. And then, out of nowhere, I got a letter. A real one. In the mail. Handwritten. The return address was my childhood home. Inside, just a single sheet of lined paper. My father's handwriting. You may think you've escaped us. But family doesn't just disappear. You owe us, whether you admit it or not. One day, you'll understand that. I tore it in half. Then again. And again. Until it was nothing but paper snow on my kitchen floor. Because I did understand something now. I understood freedom. The letter sat in pieces on my kitchen floor like it had exploded on contact. And in a way, it had. For a few seconds, I stood still, staring at the shredded lines of my father's handwriting, bold, slanted, unforgiving. I'd expected the emails, the calls, the guilt trips. But something about the physicality of the letter made it feel more primitive. Like he had wanted to cross a line and put his anger into the world in a way that couldn't be swiped away. I didn't sweep it up immediately. I left the pieces there for 2 days, stepping around them like emotional landmines. It wasn't laziness. It was a strange sort of confrontation. A quiet rebellion. I wanted to see what he'd written and destroyed, to remember what it looked like when someone tried to rewrite history and failed. Because that's what the letter was, a final attempt to rewrite the story. He wasn't trying to reconcile. He wasn't apologizing. He was declaring himself the victim. And me? The selfish child who walked away. But walking away wasn't selfish. It was survival. Emily called again the following week. I was sitting on my tiny balcony, sipping tea and watching the clouds roll over the Portland skyline when her name flashed on my screen. I answered. Hey. She sounded hesitant. Did you get Dad's letter? Yeah, I said. I told him not to send it. I said it would make things worse. I didn't answer. I think they're panicking, she continued. They've hit some financial wall they didn't see coming. That doesn't surprise me. It's the mortgage, she said. And some medical bills. Dad's back surgery. Mom's hearing problems. They're not saying it out loud, but I think they were banking on you bailing them out. I let that hang in the air. Then I said, they knew what they were doing when they left me to rot in student debt. They knew when they told me no and turned around to give you everything. I didn't ask them to do that, she said quickly. I know. This isn't about you. Not anymore. She exhaled. They still won't say it. Won't admit they were wrong. I'm not waiting for that anymore. There was a pause, then she said softly, good. That was the shift I didn't see coming. Not from my parents, but from her. I didn't send the $100,000. I didn't send a dime. Instead, I did something for myself. I took a trip. I'd always dreamed of going to Iceland, something about the desolate beauty, the silent landscapes, the rawness of nature. I booked the ticket, packed light, and told no one except my boss and Emily. It was a revelation. I stood on cliffs overlooking the ocean, walked black sand beaches, and soaked in natural hot springs. No emails. No family drama. No guilt. Just me in the cold air, reminding me what a life feels like. One night, near Vic, I met a woman named Olivia, a solo traveler from Canada. We talked for hours in the lobby of our guest house, exchanging stories like currency. When I told her a sanitized version of my past, she didn't flinch. That kind of betrayal from people who are supposed to love you, it takes years to untangle, she said. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever stop carrying it. You won't, she said. But you'll stop letting it define you. That stayed with me. When I returned home, my inbox was quiet. No new demands. No new accusations. It was like they'd finally accepted the silence. I went back to work, reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, and even started dating someone, Maya, a local barista who read poetry and knew how to make silence feel comfortable. We talked about everything except my parents. At least not at first. But one night, sitting on my couch as she traced the outline of an old scar on my arm, she asked gently, "What made you leave home so early?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "They taught me I wasn't worth investing in. So I decided I'd prove them wrong." Maya didn't ask for more. She just held my hand and nodded. Like she understood that some stories hurt more in the details. Months passed. And then, a letter arrived. Not from my parents, but from a lawyer. Apparently, my father had co-signed a loan years ago with a relative who'd defaulted, and now there was talk of repossession. Somehow, they'd tried to put part of the liability in my name through a shared family trust one didn't even know I'd been linked to. I took the letter to a legal advisor the next day. He reviewed it, raised his eyebrows, and said, "This smells like desperation." "Is it enforceable?" I asked. "Unlikely. But they'll try to scare you." I leaned back in the chair. Let them. The day I walked into the courthouse was the day I truly understood what it meant to be done. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. The letter from the lawyer had turned out to be a desperate bluff. The family trust they claimed I had legal responsibility for? Never properly registered. There was no legal standing, no binding agreement, just a name someone had lazily scrawled onto an old document from over a decade ago. Probably something my dad cooked up thinking I'd never bother to check. But I checked. And I responded. Not with threats. Not with counterattacks. With documentation. With facts. With a cease and desist. I hadn't spoken to them in over 6 months by then. Emily had called occasionally, mostly to tell me about her job, her apartment, and sometimes, if I asked, about mom and dad. "They don't talk about you anymore," she told me one afternoon. "Not even when they're drinking." "That's a blessing," I said. "I think they've realized you're really gone." That silence should have felt final. Like the door had shut and locked behind me. But there was still one part of me that couldn't let go, not until I said it. So I wrote them a letter. Not out of kindness. Not out of hope. But for closure. For me. I wrote it in one sitting, in the small kitchen of my apartment, lit only by the warm hum of the refrigerator and the pale light from the hallway. Dear David and Sharon. I've spent years trying to understand why you did what you did. Why you chose to invest in one child and not the other. Why you called it tough love when it was just neglect. Why you expected loyalty when you gave none. I used to think it was my fault, like maybe I hadn't earned it. But I know better now. You made a choice. And I made mine. You owe me nothing. I owe you nothing. We are even. Do not contact me again. I wish you peace, but I will no longer carry your weight. Your son. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. I mailed it without tracking, without a return address, and then I went for a long walk through Forest Park. The sky was cloudy, the air thick with the scent of pine and wet earth. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected text from Emily. "Emily. They sold the house." I blinked. It was the only real thing I'd ever called home, even if I hadn't felt safe there for years. Me. Why? Emily. Too much debt. No help from anyone else. I think it broke them a little. Me. They chose that. Emily. I know. She sent another message a few minutes later. Emily. They still haven't said your name out loud. Not even once. I didn't reply. Some silences say more than words ever could. Meanwhile, life got fuller. Maya and I grew closer. She knew when to ask questions and when to just sit with me. She didn't try to fix me. She just let me be. One evening, we were lying on my couch, her head on my chest, when she said, "Do you ever think you'll forgive them?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Forgiveness is overrated," I said quietly. "They don't need it. I don't need it. What I needed was distance. And now you have it." I nodded. "That's enough," I said. That year, I paid off my final student loan. I printed the confirmation email and pinned it to my refrigerator, not to brag, not to celebrate. Just to remind myself that I'd done it. Alone. No family support. No inheritance. No safety net. Just grit. And time. And survival. Emily called the next day. She always knew the milestone somehow. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Thanks," I replied. "That means more than you know." The last time I heard my mother's voice was on a voicemail I never responded to. It came almost a year after the letter I sent, after the cease and desist, after the silence, after the final line had been drawn and thickened. Her voice was soft, almost brittle. Not angry this time. Not demanding. "I know we haven't talked. I know you don't want to hear from us. I wanted to say I hope you're okay. And I'm sorry, even if that's not enough." That was it. No request. No follow-up. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite. Out of choice. By 30, my life didn't look flashy, but it felt solid. Maya and I moved in together. I was promoted to creative lead at the firm. My savings account actually had a comma in it for the first time in my adult life. And more importantly, my peace was uninterrupted. I still had days when the memories hit. A song, a smell, a stray Facebook post from someone who knew my family. But it no longer made me angry. Just distant. Like remembering a life I watched through a window but never truly lived in. One afternoon, Emily came to visit. She brought a small box with her. A literal box, plain, cardboard, sealed with packing tape. "What's this?" I asked, as we sat on the floor of my apartment, sunlight pouring in from the balcony. "Stuff from Mom and Dad's attic," she said. "They moved into a condo last month. Downsizing. They didn't want to deal with it, so they told me to throw it out." I stared at the box. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to need to open it. Emily nudged it toward me. "There's a few things in there I thought you should see." I waited until she left to open it. Inside were scraps of the past. A photo of me at age 6, holding a ribbon from a school science fair. A birthday card I'd made for my mom in crayon. A faded program from my high school graduation, one they hadn't attended because they couldn't get off work. At the bottom was a manila envelope. Inside, my college application essay, printed and annotated in my mother's handwriting. She had circled the title, "Why I Want to Build Something from Nothing," and written next to it. Beautiful. But he shouldn't have to. I sat on the floor, surrounded by a decade of absence packed into a single box, and I cried for the first time in years. Not because I missed them, but because I had finally stopped needing them to see me. Later that year, Emily got married. It was a small wedding, intimate, classy, held under fairy lights in a vineyard just outside Eugene. Maya and I attended. I gave a toast. I didn't expect to see my parents there. But they came. We didn't speak, except for polite nods. My mother looked older. Smaller. My father walked with a cane. At one point during the reception, Emily leaned over and whispered, "They wanted to say something." I told them not to. That you didn't need it anymore. I nodded. "Thanks." But toward the end of the night, as the music softened and guests started to drift away, my father approached me while I stood near the edge of the field, watching the sky darken. He stood a few feet away. No pleasantries. No preamble. Just this. "You were right. About all of it." Then he turned and walked away. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But I didn't need one. Now, years later, when I'm asked about my family, I don't lie. I just tell the truth plainly. I built my life without them. Some people understand. Others shift uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. That's fine. My story isn't for everyone. It's for the people like me. The ones who had to become their own foundation. Who learned how to love without an example. Who left because staying meant slowly disappearing. When I look back now, I don't see loss. I see escape. I see growth. I see a younger version of myself, the one who packed a duffel bag and left home without a clue how the next 10 years would go, standing on the edge of something terrifying and saying, "Okay, let's do this." That version of me didn't have help. Or hope. Or much more than sheer willpower. But they had just enough. And I'll never stop being proud of them. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.